We're doing another game of pretend today. I want you to imagine that you are a Chinese peace officer trying to tamp down on local riots. Uh, Completely unrelated to any current events going on over there. The problem is, there's a lot of rioters and they all go home afterwards, and your job is to figure out who's there and who to punish. Because these are clearly illegal protests that are interfering with government's duties and endangering the public. The problem is how? How are you going to do that? In historical times, you'd have to send out a brigade of police officers and physically round them up while they're still there. This is the future, though. 2023, welcome to it. We have cameras, and we have facial recognition technology, because don't you know, if you get a picture of the criminal at the crime scene, that's pretty good evidence, ain't it? Problem is, it's a big area, and cameras are expensive, and sometimes they're really far away. So you get this first picture, but it's of the ringleader, all right? Yeah. I can't identify that. Unfortunately, sometimes the pictures of the perpetrator is just so far away, so grainy, that they're really not useful. Like, you've all seen, bank robbery photos, CCTVs, and then, like, the side-by-side comparison of this is what we have for security, but we can get these, 60 gigabyte pictures of Jupiter. It's a little ridiculous. I have no idea who this ringleader, who the cause of all these riots is. But, in the good old mantra of CSI and all the other knockoffs of that, let's enhance. Get in there. I still can't identify that. I don't think an artificial intelligence can identify that either. But, let's enhance. It's getting there. We've got to sharpen the image. We've got to bring up the contrast a little. Let's enhance. Oh, it's coming together. Maybe you might be able to figure this out if you had an inkling of who this was already. But we can go further. We can know who the cause of the riots is. Okay, so before we discuss when at the point in that I started transgressing at Disney's copyright, original Winnie the Pooh is totally public domain, but fortunately you can see that the meme here has, the red shirt, and copyright law is really weird, so maybe I should take that off, especially because it's covering half my face. But I hope I just demonstrated something to think about. Cameras are expensive, and artificial intelligence, everyone thinks is going to cause these massive breakthroughs. But if you are trying to police a state, say London, and you're trying to sort out which, youth gang members caused the stabbing in the street out of however many thousands there are, they're all the same height, the same build, roughly the same, gait possibly. Well, you have to have a lot of training data in order to pick apart what the face is, so you can know who is each face, because you're just working off a blurry picture most of the time, and even humans at a distance, when they're looking at faces, they're not getting a crystal clear picture, but they're still going to be able to identify people. But you should know from your personal life that you can more easily identify people that you already know, but we've all been mistaken at one point where we went up to a stranger because we thought they were someone else. And that's because they had enough similarities between who we thought they were and who they actually are, that at a distance, at a blurry, at a glance, we made the mistake. We made misidentification. A lot of you may recall that Apple faced a ton of backlash a couple of years ago because they wanted to bring out these use your face to unlock your phone apps. And it came out that basically every Chinese person could open anyone's phone because the training program didn't have enough data, didn't have enough fidelity in what it's looking at to be able to differentiate a very large, mostly homogeneous population. I believe they've since fixed that just by increasing the graphical processing, but it still requires, a clear picture of the face. And if you're doing something like writing even modern day, because this is technology that exists today, they're rolling out new ways to track who is at protests based on wide scope pictures today. This is modern technology. I'm not talking about science fiction, even though I write science fiction. These are problems that people are facing today. You get one picture of 70 people carrying tiki torches down south, and you get like that much of a face, and through cross-referencing other data points, they can call it a positive identification. Is it though? The thing is that you're entirely dealing with statistical probability. Because when you only see this much of a face, you might be covering up a identifying tattoo. And you're never going to get a true 100% match. And maybe you can get close enough. And maybe you can get beyond reasonable doubt. That is how courts are supposed to work, is reasonable doubt. So one grainy picture of someone is really not enough to convict normally. But if you can compound that with other evidence, like say, here's the list of people that were on the Facebook event sign-up sheet, and then we cross-reference their mugshots that they have as their profile picture to all the pictures of people there, and therefore we're trying to identify 70 people. We're not trying to figure out who one person is that happened to show up to the Capitol out of however many hundreds of millions of people it could be. People are trying to develop these systems, and they're building and treating it as just throw processing at the problem until it works. Because they think that you can always just add more processing, that you can just get a better camera. You can just put more pixels in the picture. But can you record at that fidelity? They've done some experimental cameras where they've taken a single photo of stadiums where you can zoom in and identify every single person in the stadium. 10,000 people, you can identify their face. More or less, if you, say, know who you're looking for. That's what it always is going to come down to. Why am I bringing this up? Why am I discussing this? Other than the fact that it's interesting to talk about the technological tyranny that we're all facing and blindly walking down with no vote or consent or the public is never going to be asked, really, do you want the government building a database of every citizen's face? Do you really like the idea that the police are setting up speed trap cameras at every red light to automatically ticket you if they think that you should have stopped at that yellow light instead of going through the yellow light? Public isn't going to be asked about that. It's just going to happen. And that is worth talking about. But this is supposed to be a literary channel, right? So you might be asking, what book am I talking about right now? Why am I on this subject? Why am I talking about current events even though I'm not supposed to be talking about current events? Because today, you see, I'm actually chilling myself. These problems are on my mind constantly because the Bastion Blackstone series, which is going to be my next release, I do need to start building up hype. It is a tech noir, it's a cyberpunk mystery detective series. It's got some police procedural elements, it's got some, robot action sequences and a bunch of good stuff. And it's really a reflection of today. And that's why these things are on my mind, of how the current conditions and the current problems are going to extrapolate forward slightly. And sometimes that's how do people interact with social media, it's how do people interact with propaganda, how do people interact with, do you even elect your government anymore? Do you, the individual, have a say? Because a lot of people don't vote because they look at the polls and they go, oh, I'm in a plus 10D district. It doesn't matter, the Democrat's going to get elected. But I'm trying to write mysteries in the future. And technology constantly tries to get in the way because technology is there trying to solve problems, right? Technology is supposed to make our life better. And, we do want to be able to better identify who, the random killers are. Like, oh, there was a hit and run and we got one picture off of it, a gas station camera. But, hey, we got a positive identification there. That's a good thing. It's a double-edged sword. It's a sword that's going to be used for good and for bad. But I do want to raise the idea and give some hope to anyone else that's writing cyberpunk or science fiction mysteries, or just people that want to buy in more on the plausibility of having a mystery in these conditions. Bastion, the city that my stories take place in, is a city of 1 billion people. it's a pretty big city. It's a mega city like out of Judge Dredd, right? But there's a lot of people that can very easily get to anywhere in the city. And there's a functioning public transportation network, believe it or not. So when the police, such as Detective Blackstone, are trying to find one specific person, it's actually very plausible, in my opinion, that even with cameras, even if they get a picture of the person's face, at 1 billion people, can you actually identify with certainty that it's that one individual? Or are you going to say, it's 1 out of 10? Or is it 1 out of 100 people could have been identified there? 1 out of 1,000 people? Oh, you had a bad picture? There's a million people. It really could have been. And this goes along with other systems that people could be using to identify people through visual data. People will often bring up gait analysis, which is something you can do if you catch someone walking by themselves. Or you can bring up fingerprints. But both of those are fundamentally flawed, or they lose to the scale of population, as long as there is enough people. Because your gait is going to be determined by injuries. It's going to be determined by your height, your musculature, how much weight you're carrying. But it's also going to be influenced by how fatigued are you, how much have you had to eat, are you anxious, are you in a rush, do your shoes fit well. Even scanning the same person over and over and over again, even if you can say that there is an underlying identifiable gait, there's going to be enough variation that if you compare them to someone else who gets moderate exercise and is 6'3", how are you going to positively identify that it's a different person? I just don't buy it. I think there's a lot of hype being driven by this to gather government funding for these projects that just fundamentally isn't going to work. And that's my justification for why mystery is still going to work in the future, that you can still have crimes happen where you don't necessarily know where the criminal is, how they got there, who they are. All the classic tropes that drive a good detective series. You just have to be a little careful with it, because you are going to get some. But I don't think that when you get to massive populations, especially when you consider that processing power is expensive, putting cameras everywhere and maintaining cameras over time, that's really expensive. And maybe you say, oh, but the government just wastes money. They'll just keep buying cameras. Will they, though? Governments don't maintain things well. Private property can maintain cameras pretty well, but are they really going to just hand over everything to the government because the detective says, oh, this is a crime scene? Or I think this guy showed up. Do I have the evidence? No, I think you have the evidence. Is he going to be able to get the warrant? I think these are all things worth considering, especially in current life. There's some very questionable things going on with false positives. Here's another example. Geofencing. Do you like the idea that the police can query your phone provider and say, give me every phone that had its GPS location within a quarter mile of where this occurred at this time, and we're going to round up every single person that was there because their phone said they were there? Kind of invades your privacy, doesn't it? People are doing that. People are in jail right now because of that. But hey, maybe the recipe is every single one of these systems turns out to be one element, one clue, one way to narrow down who it is. And from there, you can actually build a reasonable series of clues to build to a climax to narrow in on who the criminal is. And there's something to be said for that, too. Till then, I hope I've given you something to think about and some food for thought, some excitement for my upcoming book, Gamma Coin, Bastian Blackstone Book 2. Always be shilling. Please subscribe, ring the bell, leave a like, tell your friends, leave a comment. Comment about your favorite... Yeah, tell me your favorite cyberpunk book. I probably know most of them, but, drop it down below. Is it Blade Runner? Is it Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Neuromancer? Mona Lisa Overdrive? Hardwired? Ghost in the Shell? Faceless? Let me know. Till then, cheers.